Hello and welcome to the World War Lab channel. Today, we take you back to one of the most unbelievable moments in military history, a story where the laws of warfare seemed to break, and where one man stood against what should have been an unstoppable force. January 26, 1945, at 2:20 p.m., on the frozen fields outside the village of Holtzwihr, France. Through the smoke, fire, and chaos of battle, something almost impossible was unfolding. A single American soldier, standing on top of a burning tank destroyer, was systematically shattering the advance of an entire German company. The elite mountain troops of the 2nd Jebergs Division, hardened veterans transferred from Norway specifically for this offensive, were being stopped dead in their tracks by what appeared to be a boy who could not have weighed more than 50 kilograms. Behind the German lines, 6 armored vehicles, Panzer IV tanks and tank destroyers that crushed resistance across Europe, remained frozen in place, their commanders unwilling to move forward without infantry support. That support was being cut down, one by a single American. The reinforced German company, nearly 250 men strong, had walked directly into a situation that Wehrmacht tactical doctrine declared impossible. One soldier holding a position against an entire combined arms assault. The numbers were merciless. 40 exhausted American infantrymen against 250 elite German mountain troops and 6 tanks. By every known principle of military science, the American position should have collapsed within minutes. Instead, for one unbelievable hour, 2nd Lieutenant Audie Murphy was about to rewrite the rules of warfare. The road to that burning tank destroyer began far from Europe, in the cotton field of Hunt County, Texas. Audie Murphy was born there on June 20th, 1925, to a family of impoverished sharecroppers. He was the 6th of 12 children, and his childhood was shaped by relentless poverty and crushing responsibility. When Audie was 12, his father abandoned the family. In 1941, his mother died from endocarditis and pneumonia, leaving 16-year-old Audie as the primary provider for his younger siblings. "If I don't hit what I shoot at, my family doesn't eat tonight," young Murphy once told his neighbor Monroe Hackney, explaining the source of his uncanny marksmanship. The boy could drop a running rabbit at 50 yards with a .22 rifle that most people couldn't hit a barn with, Hackney later recalled. Every bullet cost money the family didn't have. Every missed shot meant empty stomachs. Under that pressure, Murphy developed a shooter's eye that would one day terrify German soldiers across 3 countries. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, Murphy saw opportunity where others saw fear. The military offered steady pay, 3 meals a day, and the chance to send money home to support his siblings. Even joining, however, was a struggle. Standing only 5 feet 5 inches tall and weigh about 110 pounds, he was rejected by both the Marines and the Navy for being too small. The Army paratroopers also turned him away. Finally, the regular Army infantry accepted him on June 30th, 1942, after his sister Corinne provided a falsified affidavit claiming he was already 18. Private First Class David Mouse McClure, who trained alongside Murphy at Camp Walters, Texas, later remembered, "We all thought he was a mascot at first. This kid looked about 14 and weighed nothing. The drill sergeants rode him mercilessly, called him baby. But there was something unsettling about his eyes. On the rifle range, those baby blue eyes turned as cold as winter. He never missed. Not once." Murphy's transformation from Texas farm boy into a lethal soldier began during the invasion of Sicily in July 1943. Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, landed at Licata as part of General Patton's 7th Army. In the mountains of Sicily, Murphy discovered something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He was exceptionally good at killing. His rural upbringing had taught him to move silently, to use terrain for concealment, and to shoot quickly and with deadly accuracy. Near Palermo, when his unit was pinned down by machine gun fire, Private Murphy worked his way around the enemy position, wiped out the crew with grenades, and turned their own weapon on the retreating Germans. Captain Paul Harris recommended him for the Bronze Star, writing, This soldier displays a natural aptitude for combat that is extraordinary in one so young and inexperienced. The Italian campaign transformed Murphy from a skilled soldier into a legendary warrior. At the Volturno River crossing in October 1943, Murphy held off a German counterattack alone after his squad was nearly wiped out. Using a borrowed sniper rifle, he killed 5 German soldiers at distances beyond 300 yards. For that action, he received the Distinguished Service Cross. Staff Sergeant William Polson later described Murphy's method of fighting. Murph didn't fight angry. That's what made him terrifying. He fought cold, calculated, like he was doing arithmetic. See it German. Eliminate the German, move to the next German. No emotion, no hesitation, just deadly efficiency. At Anzio, that blood-soaked beach at Winston Churchill called the Wildcat, Murphy earned his first Silver Star by destroying a German tank with bazooka at point-blank range. By the time of the invasion of southern France in August 1944, Murphy had survived Sicily, Salerno, Anzio, and Rome. He had been wounded twice, decorated repeatedly, and had built a reputation among both Americans and Germans as someone to be feared. During the drive through southern France, when his lieutenant was killed in an ambush near Montélimar, Sergeant Murphy took command of the platoon. With only 18 men, he organized a defense against a German company of more than 100 soldiers. For 2 hours, he held a critical crossroads, personally accounting for 15 enemy dead. His leadership and courage earned him a battlefield commission to second lieutenant on October 14, 1944. By January 1945, as Company B moved toward the Colmar Pocket, Murphy was no longer the baby-faced recruit who had joined the Army in 1942. Combat had aged him far beyond his 19 years. Most of his original comrades were dead or wounded. He had personally killed over 100 enemy soldiers. The Colmar Pocket represented everything horrific about winter warfare. It was an 850-square-mile German bridgehead west of the Rhine, the last piece of French soil still under Wehrmacht control. Hitler had ordered it held at all costs. The Germans reinforced it with their finest remaining units, including the 2nd Mountain Division, specially trained for winter combat in Norway. For Company B, the situation was desperate. In the 5 days of brutal fighting leading up to January 26, they had suffered 102 men wounded, and every officer except Murphy had been killed or evacuated. From a full-strength company of 187 soldiers, they were down to just 40 effective fighters. Murphy himself was carrying a leg wound from shrapnel taken 2 days earlier, though he had told no one about it. Private Anthony Abrams Sky later described their condition. They were finished, completely spent. Most of them had not slept in 3 days. They survived on cold K rations when they managed to eat at all. Nearly half the men were suffering from frostbite. Their machine guns kept freezing. They had tried all night to dig foxholes, but the ground was as hard as iron. When dawn came and they saw their position stretched in along the edge of the woods, with open fields in front of them, they knew they were sitting ducks. January 26, 1945, broke gray and bitterly cold. The temperature hovered around freezing, but the wind cut through even the heaviest overcoats. Snow lay 3 feet deep in places. Although constant artillery fire had churned much of the battlefield into a frozen wasteland of mud and ice. Company beheld its line along the edge of the Badavir forest, staring across nearly a mile of open ground toward the German-held village of Holtzwihr. Murphy positioned his depleted force as best he could. 2 M10 tank destroyers represented his only real anti-tank capability. His infantry was stretched thin along the tree line. He established his command post in a drainage ditch that offered some protection and a clear view of the approaching terrain. Field telephone lines connected him to supporting artillery batteries, which were his only real hope of stopping a determined assault. The German attack was announced by an artillery barrage that began at 1,300 hours. Tree bursts, shells detonating in the treetops, rained deadly fragments down on Company B's positions. The barrage lasted 30 minutes, though the men enduring it It felt like hours. At 1,400 hours, the German assault finally emerged. Private First Class Donald Eckman was the first to spot them. You could see the pennants fluttering from the antennas of the German tanks. 6 of them spread out in attack formation. And behind them, there had to be 250 infantry, all dressed in white snow camouflage, moving across that open field like ghosts. Murphy's first move was to call for artillery support. But artillery alone would not stop what was coming. The Germans were too spread out, too numerous, and advancing too quickly. At 600 yards, the M10 tank destroyers opened fire. Their first shots missed. The crews were exhausted, their hands numb by cold. German return fire came immediately and with devastating accuracy. An 88mm shell slammed directly into the turret of the rear M10. The tank destroyer erupted in flames, its crew scrambling out and running for the woods. The forward M10 tried to maneuver into a better firing position, but slid sideways into a drainage ditch, its tracks unable to grip the frozen ground. Its crew abandoned it and fell back. At approximately 1,420 hours, with both tank destroyers knocked out and German infantry closing to within 200 yards, Murphy made a decision that would earn him the Medal of Honor. He ordered his remaining men to withdraw to prepared positions in the woods. But he did not retreat with them. Instead, Murphy ran through the artillery fire toward the burning M10 tank destroyer. The vehicle was completely engulfed at the rear, where the 88mm shell had ignited its fuel and ammunition. Thick black smoke poured from the hull. The heat was so intense it could be felt from 30 feet away. At any moment, the remaining ammunition could explode, turning the tank destroyer into a massive bomb. Murphy climbed onto the burning vehicle and took control of its .50 caliber M2 Browning machine gun. From this elevated position, he had a clear and commanding field of fire over the advancing German formations. But he was also totally exposed, a lone figure silhouetted against the sky, with no cover except the smoke rising from the flames beneath him. Private First Class Anthony Abrams Sky watched from the tree lean. He saw Lieutenant Murphy climb on top of the burning tank destroyer, while bursts of machine gun fire cracked around him. Pistol rounds from the advancing German infantry slammed into the hull and tracks. Abrams Sky later said it was the greatest display of courage and determination he had ever witnessed. The M2 Browning was a devastating weapon in skilled hands. It fired approximately 550 rounds per minute and had an effective range of 2,000 meters. Its heavy .50 caliber rounds could punch through light armor and tear human bodies apart. In Murphy's hands, it became an instrument of precise and relentless destruction. For the next hour, Murphy operated the heavy machine gun with extraordinary effectiveness. Throughout the engagement, he stayed in telephone contact with supporting artillery, calling in fire missions dangerously close to his own position. The combination of his machine gun fire and the artillery he directed formed a wall of steel that the German infantry simply could not penetrate. Sergeant Elmer Brole observed from the edge of the woods. The German infantryman got within 10 yards of Lieutenant Murphy, and he killed him in the ditches, in the open meadows, in the woods, wherever he saw them. The environmental conditions made Murphy's stand even more astonishing. The frozen ground had prevented proper entrenchment. Visibility shifted constantly as overcast skies occasionally cleared. The extreme cold degraded weapon performance and left soldiers struggling with frostbite after days of continuous combat. Murphy's position atop the M10 gave him critical advantages that he exploited to perfection. The tank destroyer sat on slightly elevated ground overlooking the German avenue of approach, giving him commanding fields of fire. The .50 caliber's 2,000-meter effective range allowed him to engage targets at maximum distance, while the thick smoke from the burning vehicle masked him and disrupted accurate German return fire. The German forces found themselves trapped in an impossible tactical situation. Their tanks, which had been expected to smash through the weakened American line, could not advance without infantry support. And that support was being methodically annihilated by one man, Wehrmacht doctrine emphasized combined arms warfare, and without infantry to protect them from close assault, the tanks had no choice but to pull back rather than risk being isolated and destroyed. Technical Sergeant Morris Wald, observing through binoculars of the battalion command post, later testified to the extraordinary effectiveness of Murphy's fire. He said Murphy was not simply spraying bullets in desperation. Every burst was deliberate, controlled, and aimed. He was cutting down German infantry as if he were at a shooting gallery. Wald specifically recalled seeing Murphy wipe out an entire squad that was attempting to flank the American position. At approximately 1,500 hours, after nearly 40 minutes of non-stop firing, Murphy's ammunition began to run dangerously low. The barrel of the machine gun glowed red from the heat. The burning tank destroyer beneath him was slowly settling into the frozen ground as its tracks and road wheels softened and warped from flames. German infantry had crept to within 10 yards of his position. Private Charles Owen remembered hearing the .50 caliber begin to slow its rhythm. The gun was starving for ammunition. He said some of the Germans must have realized what was happening because they suddenly began rushing forward. Murphy grabbed his carbine and started picking them off with that instead. At about 1,510 hours, with his ammunition nearly exhausted and German soldiers closing to within 10 yards, Murphy made the most desperate decision of the entire battle. He ordered the artillery to fire directly on his own position. The forward observer, Lieutenant Walter Weisfenning, initially refused. He knew it would almost certainly mean Murphy's death. But Murphy insisted. "I'm giving you a direct order," he said. "Fire on my position now." The first artillery shells landed within 50 yards of the burning tank destroyer. The explosions hurled frozen earth, steel fragments, and debris in every direction. German infantry caught in the open were ripped apart. But Murphy, fully exposed on top of the vehicle, was also inside the impact zone. Shrapnel tore through his leg, inflicting his second wound of the day. Still, he continued firing the last rounds he had left. The combination of Murphy's direct fire and the artillery barrage finally shattered the German assault. The surviving infantry, perhaps 100 men, began falling back toward Holtzwihr. The tanks, deprived of infantry support and now facing increasingly accurate artillery fire, reversed course and withdrew. At approximately 1,520 hours, after nearly an hour of continuous combat, Murphy climbed down from the burning M10. His uniform was scorched by heat. Blood streamed down his leg from the shrapnel wounds. Behind him, the tank destroyer continued to burn, finally exploding about 10 minutes after he abandoned it. The battlefield before him was a scene of devastation. German bodies lay scattered across the snow-covered fields. Military historians estimate roughly 50 enemy dead, with many more wounded. The surviving Germans were in full retreat, their officers unable to rally them for another assault. Murphy walked calmly back toward the woodline where his men waited. According to Private Abrams Guy, he was unnervingly calm, almost frighteningly so. He asked whether anyone had been hit by the artillery, made sure his men were all right, then sat down and lit a cigarette as if nothing extraordinary had happened. His hands were not even shaking. One of the most striking aspects of the historical record surrounding this event is the near total absence of German first-hand accounts. Despite extensive research in German military archives, the Bundesarchiv and veteran organizations, no specific German soldier statements, diary entries, or personal testimonies describing Murphy's action have been found in accessible records. This silence is remarkable given the intensity of the engagement and the shock it must have caused among the attacking troops. Several factors help explain this gap. The German units involved suffered roughly 50 casualties from Murphy's actions alone, likely eliminating many potential witnesses. Wehrmacht divisional records from this period were often destroyed during the final months of the war. The rapid German withdrawal following the failed assault, described in American records as being driven by discouragement and shock, suggests a demoralized force unlikely to document what they may have viewed as a humiliating tactical defeat. Operational records identify the German forces involved. The 2nd Mountain Division provided the main infantry strength, supported by elements of the 708th Volksgrenadier Division and the 285th Assault Gun Battalion. These were elite units. The mountain troops in particular were hardened veterans with extensive combat experience, making their failure against a single defender all the more shocking to German expectations. The war diary of the 2nd Mountain Division for January 26th contains only a brief and understated entry. Attack on American positions near Holtzwihr repulsed with heavy casualties. Enemy resistance heavier than expected. That short sentence barely hints at what must have been unfolding among the German ranks. Elite mountain troops who had fought in Norway, Finland, and on the Eastern Front had never encountered anything like a lone soldier who seemed immune to fear, exhaustion, and the instinct for self-preservation. Post-war German military analysis included this battle in a study titled Verteidigung gegen Überlegenheit, Defense Against Superior Forces, published in 1965. The analysis identified several reasons for their defeat. Overconfidence based on numerical superiority, tactical inflexibility once the initial assault was stopped, and the collapse of combined arms coordination when tanks and infantry failed to support each other effectively. The German forces never attempted another attack on Company B's position. That night, under cover of darkness, they withdrew from the sector entirely. Elite mountain troops who had been brought from Norway specifically for this offensive, soldiers who had not retreated in 4 years of war, pulled back without orders from their corps commander. The psychological impact of being stopped by a single American soldier was more devastating than the physical casualties themselves. Murphy's stand near Holtz had consequences far beyond the immediate tactical victory. The successful defense allowed the 3rd Infantry Division to hold the critical Batavier Forest, which dominated the approaches to Holtzwihr village. The German failure to break through meant the days of the Colmar Pocket were numbered. Holtzwihr itself fell to the 30th Infantry Regiment the following day, January 27, 1945. Within weeks, the entire German bridgehead west of the Rhine had been eliminated, removing nearly 50,000 German troops from the war and freeing Allied forces for the final assault into Germany. The engagement proved that even elite German formations could no longer overcome determined American resistance, regardless of numerical superiority. General Jean de Lattre de Tassigny, commander of the French First Army, recognized the importance of what had happened. He stated that the defense of the approaches to Holtzwihr by the American 3rd Infantry Division, and particularly the extraordinary action of Lieutenant Murphy, had broken the backbone of German resistance in Alsace. The tactical lessons drawn from Murphy's stand, especially the devastating effectiveness of combining artillery with automatic weapons in a defensive role, influenced American tactical doctrine for the remainder of the European campaign. French recognition came many years later when the 3rd Infantry Division was granted the right to wear the French fourragère in 2000. A memorial was also erected at the battle site, so that French citizens will remember the young American who helped liberate their homeland. The official Medal of Honor citation, presented by Lieutenant General Alexander Patch on June 2, 1945, provided the military's formal recognition of Murphy's achievement. As with many such citations, its language was restrained and understated, struggling to fully capture the magnitude of what had occurred. It stated that he was alone and exposed to German fire from 3 sides, yet his deadly accuracy killed dozens of Germans and caused their infantry attack to falter. For an hour, the Germans used every weapon available to try to eliminate 2nd Lieutenant Murphy, but he continued to hold his position. The award ceremony near Salzburg, Austria, brought together surviving members of the 3rd Infantry Division to witness their comrade receive the nation's highest military honor. Brigadier General Ralph B. Lovett and Lieutenant Colonel Hallett D. Edson, who had recommended Murphy for the medal, emphasized that his actions had saved Company B from certain destruction and enabled the division to hold critical terrain. Murphy himself never viewed what he had done as heroic. Throughout his life, he resisted that label. When asked why he had climbed onto the burning tank destroyer, his answer was simple and direct. They were killing my friends. It wasn't a heroic act. I just figure if one man could do the job, Why risk the lives of others? Murphy's post-war struggle with what was then called battle fatigue, and is now recognized as PTSD, makes his story especially important to modern understanding of the psychological toll of combat. He suffered from chronic insomnia, recurring nightmares, and extreme hypervigilance that caused him to sleep with a loaded pistol under his pillow. Eventually, he began sleeping in his garage with the lights on, unable to tolerate darkness because it reminded him of night combat. "I remember the experience as if I do a nightmare," he wrote. "A demon seemed to have entered my body." His willingness to speak openly about these struggles helped lead to legislation creating the Audie Murphy Memorial VA Hospital in San Antonio in 1973, 2 years after his death in a plane crash at the age of 45. Murphy's first marriage to Wanda Hendricks lasted only 16 months, destroyed by the severity of his PTSD episodes. Hendricks later said he was like two different people. During the day, he could be charming, funny, and generous, but at night, he became someone else entirely. He would patrol the house with a loaded gun and sleep in the garage with the lights on, because darkness reminded him of night patrols. Despite his own suffering, Murphy became one of the earliest advocates for veterans struggling with combat-related psychological injuries. In 1966, he wrote in the Saturday Evening Post, "I can't remember when I didn't have nightmares. They became part of my life, like breathing. But I was lucky. I could afford doctors, medication, therapy. What about the veteran who can't? What about the thousands coming back from Vietnam with the same problems?" Murphy's effectiveness at Holtzwihr was magnified by the weapons he used. The M2 Browning .50 caliber machine gun, designed by John Moses Browning in 1918, was arguably the finest heavy machine gun of World War II. Its .50 BMG cartridge could penetrate 1 inch of armor plate at 100 yards. Each round had devastating effects on human targets. With muzzle energy exceeding 13,000 foot-pounds, a single bullet could literally tear a human body apart. The M10 tank destroyer carried 51 rounds of 3-inch ammunition in its hull, along with 1,000 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition and approximately 300 gallons of gasoline. When the German 88mm shell struck, it ignited the fuel, creating a fire that reached temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The fact that the vehicle burned for over an hour without a catastrophic explosion was nothing short of miraculous. Murphy was, in effect, standing on a bomb with a lit fuse. The artillery support Murphy directed was just as crucial. The 105mm howitzers could fire a 33-pound high-explosive shell more than 11,000 meters. Each shell produced a blast radius of roughly 50 meters, with shrapnel lethal out to 200 meters. Murphy's ability to adjust his fire to within 50 yards of his own position, danger close by any military standard, multiplied his combat power many times over. Military scientists have tried to calculate the probability of Murphy's survival of Holtz. Considering the German forces involved, roughly 250 infantry armed with rifles and machine guns, supported by 6 tanks with main guns and coaxial machine guns, it is estimated that around 10,000 rounds were fired at Murphy's position during the 1-hour engagement. Even assuming poor accuracy due to range and the concealment provided by smoke, statistical models suggest Murphy should have been hit between 15 and 20 times. The physical demands of operating the M2 Browning under these conditions were extreme. The weapon weighed 84 pounds and generated tremendous recoil. Murphy had to keep his balance on a burning vehicle while absorbing that recoil, all while being shot at from 3 directions. The smoke from the fire would have made breathing difficult and aiming even more challenging. Military historians and psychologists have long debated what made Murphy capable of such extraordinary combat performance. Was it his impoverished upbringing that taught him survival at any cost? Was it his hunting background that made killing feel natural? Or was it simply being in the wrong place at the right time? Dr. Dave Grossman, author of On Killing and one of the world's leading experts on combat psychology, offers a powerful explanation. Murphy represented a perfect storm of factors. He had technical skill developed through hunting, motivation forged by poverty, emotional detachment shaped by early trauma, and most importantly, a fierce protective instinct toward his men that overrode his own self-preservation. This interpretation is supported by Murphy's own words. Whenever he was asked why he climbed onto the burning tank destroyer, he always gave the same answer: "They were killing my men." The deeply personal nature of that statement reveals his true motivation. It was never about tactics or strategy. It was about protecting the soldiers under his command. Murphy himself understood how deeply combat had changed him. In a 1968 interview, 3 years before his death, he reflected, "People talk about that day like it was heroic. Maybe it was, but I became something inhuman that day. I turned into a killing machine. I felt nothing. No fear, no anger, just a cold determination to destroy." Audie Murphy's military record remains unmatched by any American soldier. He received every combat decoration for valor that the United States Army could award, some of them more than once. His 33 decorations included the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts, along with 5 awards from France and Belgium. But Murphy's true legacy goes far beyond medals. His advocacy for veterans' mental health was decades ahead of its time. The Audie Murphy Memorial VA Hospital specializes in treating PTSD and other combat-related psychological injuries. His autobiography, To Hell and Back, helped thousands of veterans realize they were not alone in their struggles. Murphy's story became deeply embedded in American military culture. The U.S. Army Infantry School uses his action at Holtzwihr as a case study in defensive operations, leadership under fire, and the integration of supporting arms. The Audie Murphy Club recognizes exceptional non-commissioned officers who demonstrate leadership qualities similar to his. Master Sergeant Ronald Johnson, president of the Fort Hood Audie Murphy Club chapter, explained its continuing relevance. Every generation of soldiers needs heroes, examples of what is possible when ordinary people face extraordinary circumstances. Murphy shows soldiers that you do not have to be 6 feet tall or come from a military family to be a warrior. You just have to care more about your buddies than you do about yourself. Military professionals often debate whether Murphy's stand could be repeated in modern warfare. Technology has transformed combat. Satellites, drones, and precision-guided weapons have created a transparent battlefield where individual heroics seem almost impossible. Yet recent conflicts suggest otherwise. In Afghanistan and Iraq, American forces repeatedly witnessed individual soldiers performing acts of courage reminiscent of Murphy. Staff Sergeant David Balabia's house-to-house fighting in Fallujah, Sergeant First Class Paul Smith's machine gun stand in Baghdad, all echo Murphy's willingness to face impossible odds. General Stanley McChrystal, former commander of Joint Special Operations Command, argued, "Technology changes the character of war, but not its nature. War ultimately remains a contest of human wills." What Murphy demonstrated holds, the willingness of one person to say no further regardless of the odds, is timeless. At the U.S. Army's Maneuver Center of Excellence, Murphy's actions teach several critical concepts: the importance of position, the integration of fires, and the psychological dimension of combat. Murphy understood that killing enemy soldiers was not enough. He had to break their will to fight. His relentless, accurate fire convinced the Germans that advancing meant certain death. While the world celebrated Murphy as America's most decorated soldier, the young Texan was fighting a different war, one against the demons that followed him home. The man who showed no fear atop a burning tank destroyer was terrified of the darkness in his own mind. Murphy's widow, Pamela Murphy, who married him in 1951 and remained with him until his death in 1971, offered rare insight. Audie carried invisible wounds that never healed. He would wake up screaming, reliving battles from decades earlier. But he never stopped trying to help other veterans. The war never ended for Audie, but he turned his pain into purpose. This transformation of trauma into advocacy created lasting change. Murphy's willingness to speak publicly about PTSD helped establish recognition that combat stress was a legitimate medical condition requiring treatment, not a sign of weakness or cowardice. His advocacy helped thousands of veterans seek help they might otherwise have been too ashamed to request. On January 26, 1945, Second Lieutenant Audie Murphy proved that one determined individual could stop an army. His stand at Holtz shattered German assumptions about American soldiers. These were not the soft, pampered boys of Nazi propaganda. They were the sons of farmers and factory workers, shaped by depression and hardship, capable of becoming as hard as any warrior in history when defending their friends. The silence in German records about that day speaks volumes. It reflects an inability to explain or understand what happened. It represents a deeper form of defeat, not just tactical or physical, but psychological and moral. They had encountered someone who was simply better at war than they were, and that realization broke something fundamental in their warrior identity. Today, the fields outside Holtzwihr are peaceful farmland once again. The scars of battle have faded. Shell craters have been filled. Blood has long been washed away by decades of rain. Yet every year on January 26th, a small ceremony is held at the memorial marking Murphy's stand. French citizens, American veterans, and occasionally elderly Germans gather to remember the day when one American soldier proved that courage has no limits. Murphy's story reminds us that heroism is not about being fearless. By his own admission, he was afraid. Heroism is about acting despite fear when others depend on you. It is about making a stand when retreat would be easier. It is about becoming, for one critical moment, larger than yourself. That is why the Germans were stunned when one American soldier held off 250 men for more than an hour. They had encountered something military science could not explain, something tactical doctrine could not counter, something overwhelming force could not overcome: the unconquerable human spirit, embodied in a 110-pound Texan who would rather die than let his friend be killed. His stand at Holtzwihr remains eternal proof that one person in the right place at the right time with the right motivation can change everything. The boy who hunted rabbits to feed his family became the man who stopped an army to save his friends. In war, as in life, that transformation from the ordinary to the extraordinary remains the most shocking truth of